As we're set to enter the 6th year for Sea of Thieves and following what I think is fair to say an underwhelming 2023, something has been bubbling in this community in the last year or so, and that's an underlying pessimism about Sea of Thieves. This really hit home for me following the last content release of the Skull of Siren song, where it's something I saw as a great little release garnered a lot of negativity in the comments, which kinda surprised me and actually inspired this video. Sea of Thieves will never be great again, and that is a bold statement. And if you think this is going to be me ragging on the developers or shitting on the game, this isn't the video for you. But more so about why Rare's hands are tied when it comes to releasing content for this game, and why the game will never be great again in the eyes of every single player. Of course, Sea of Thieves is my favourite game of all time, and I'm quite happy with where the game is at the moment, aside from some small personal gripes. Let's go over, briefly, the biggest issue with the game right now, and that stems from the various delays we've had in the last 18 months or so. To be clear, delays happen, shit happens. Hell, I delay videos all the time. A great man once said that plans never survive contact with the enemy. The first major delay we had was Season 7, that turned Season 6 into a 5-month season way back in 2022. Following this, builds seemed to be not synced internally, and we ended up getting a few things released in retail that spoiled major content. Examples of this include Flameheart's body appearing before Return of the Damned, and the Season 8 flags appearing in late Season 7. But Rare hit it out of the park in Season 8 with their best season yet, and it felt like we were back. Fast forward to Season 9, people were generally positive about it, aside from the cheating problem, but that's another topic. All was doing well until we got a second delay for Season 10. Guilds seemingly caused a big problem behind the scenes, and without going into too much detail, seemed to throw this entire year out of whack. Rare did try to remedy this with a super season, released 3 pieces of content over the course of 3 or 4 months. First was Guilds, second was Skull of Siren song, and third will be Safer Seas in roughly 2 weeks time. The problem with this is that when people have been waiting so long for an update, the update needs to be damn near perfect. I like Season 10 so far, I've enjoyed my time with Guilds and I love the Skull of Siren song, but I see the opposite opinion online, with the main issues being cited as doing the same thing over and over again, and just reskinning an Ashen Wind skull. Well, this is true to some extent. It's important to note the Skull of Siren song was not necessarily delayed. I don't think it's fair to say that we waited 7 months for it, because it would have come out in November anyway. This is where the main issue lies. It just doesn't feel like Rare has caught up to those delays. If you think to the positive reactions to even Season 8 or Season 6, the reception to Season 10 would have been much warmer should one of those features been to that scale, like a new voyage or world event. I get the vibe that we're still a bit behind in terms of story, since we do know Flameheart was delayed until next year, and as was this Temple Voyage adventure thing, if it's even happening at this point. I just don't see the Season 10 super season as big enough to feel like we're back on track, and I think many of you probably agree with that too. And since we're on that topic, Safer Seas arguably represents this biggest disconnect, and could represent a very real issue for Rare. Sea of Thieves has attracted all kinds of players, and everyone has a different opinion on what updates they want, what constitutes a good update, and what is worthy of a season. This can be PvP players, PvE players, or PvPvE chads who utilise all of Sea of Thieves. I for one really want more Tall Tales, and I want more sandbox toys or world events. Someone else wants a Hunter's Call update. The next person wants Safer Seas. The updates for this game and its content is so vast that nothing short of an anniversary update will please the fan base of this game. There will always be complaints. Is that Rare's fault? Probably not, but a good example of this is Safer Seas. Safer Seas will likely bring a wave of returning and older players, but for me and many of you, it's a nothing update that doesn't alter how I play the game. I'll boot up the game in 2 weeks time, go to High Seas and just play like I normally would, as if the game hasn't been updated aside for some fixes and an Emporium update. Others will be installing Sea of Thieves and jumping into the game fresh, able to learn the game away from sweats, griefers, and toxic asshats, or even returning players who just don't want a PvP environment. This is great for the health of the game in the short term, but what happens when the next update comes out and it's not available on Safer Seas? The update is only available for half the player base that enjoys High Seas. This is just one example, but goes for any update. Siren Song does nothing for those who dislike PvP. You have this player base of over 5 years mixed in with new people who have a different understanding of the game, and everyone is vying for their update. How could you possibly keep everyone happy with 2, 3 or 4 updates per year? I think the second issue causing this overall pessimism with the game is the technical aspect of it, and this really shows in how the updates have changed over time. If you think back to year 1, 2 or even 3, the updates were focused on adding new things to the world, the sandbox and more. We got a new region, new AI threats on both land and sea, new locations in the current map, new ammunition for our cannons, and new sandbox toys. This pretty much stopped in around Season 6 with Legend of the Veil, but I guess Season 8 did add new areas to explore the map. However, the overall content of Season 8 was new factions and PvP, which people have been doing for 5 years. It's just a way to access it easier. But in 2023, we had new Monkey Island Tall Tales that are all instanced in another server. Season 9 brought nothing major in terms of new things to do, and the world only really changed with the Burning Blades construction and the hideout under New Golden Sands. I suppose Port Merrick was completed too, which surely puts a tax on the server. When we look at Season 10, Safer Seas just takes things away from the main world. Guilds is a retread of some stuff that we've been doing for years, and Siren Song is a short dig quest that must be super low on resources, and even Season 9 was all about revising old content whilst smoothing it out. What's worse is that we know the servers are at breaking point since Hit Red was in an awful state at the launch of Season 10. It was so bad we had to regress to 5 ships per server. To Rare's credit, they have addressed this and they are working on it. The engineers at Rare seem to, in fact, we know this is the case because it was confirmed in the documentary, looking for ways to free up processing power, and that is very, very likely in relation to servers. There is only so much they can add to this game at this point without removing content. I've always seen the game as having even more potential than we see now, but it's just being held back by those servers. The sandbox is full of sand that if we add more, it just starts to overflow and create a mess. So we take these servers and then mix it in with a veteran player base that has experienced bigger and flashier updates. Like me, I'm very guilty of this, and our expectations have been set too high by those old updates. We've been spoiled in many ways, and you don't even have to look back that far to be probably included in that group, even only a year or so ago I would say. Then the last problem is, how does Rare appeal to this eclectic fan base while getting new players in to generate revenue from Game Pass and get people to buy stuff from the Pirate Emporium? First and foremost, games take a precedent of making money over everything else. Despite some extremely talented and passionate people working on them, all of our happiness does not make shareholders happy. If Sea of Thieves made no money, it would be shelved, just like any other live service game. A prime example of this is the removal of Quick Swap. I made a short about it and the comments were pretty divided, but the reason it was removed was due to it being an unintended mechanic that was deemed unfair to new players. When new players have the potential to increase the overall player base, increase Game Pass downloads, and have a bigger customer base to sell microtransactions to, it makes sense from the business perspective. See it this way, Rare doesn't need to sell Sea of Thieves to you and I, we're already core players that will play the game pretty much no matter what. And I'll put it to you, how often do you see new players with flashy Emporium cosmetics? I see them all the time. Sea of Thieves is still an amazing game and I don't think it's dying, but I would say there is an underlying pessimism with this game. It's pretty normal 6 years into a game's life cycle. You have a massive player base with varying tastes all pulling resources away from one another, coupled with servers that don't have much more capacity to add new things, and the need to attract new players to make money. There's all these factors pulling at the game that has created this atmosphere that will always foster complaints and criticism. While this video does end on a pessimistic note, ironically, it's actually a 2-part video and part 2 is a very optimistic topic, and without spoiling too much, I have a hunch that a sequel or some form of major technical update is in the works for this game, but you'll have to wait until next week to find out.